I think Bitcoin is the same thing as a meme coin. What's the meme? The meme is that it's digital gold, but it's not digital gold any more than an image of a hamburger is digital food. Yes, I live in a digital economy, but I have to eat real food. If I had a diet of digital food, I'd starve to death. Gold is a real commodity. That's why it became money. Well, first of all, I think to the extent that there's a generational divide, it's generally because the younger generation needs to grow up a bit and get a little bit more wisdom and experience to understand the difference between Bitcoin and gold. I don't think that Bitcoin is digital money or money in the digital economy. I think that you can easily digitize gold if you want to have money that you can transfer electronically. We can tokenize gold. Any company could do it the same way that banks or goldsmiths issued paper notes backed by gold. So people didn't have to lug their gold around. They could leave their gold with a blacksmith or then eventually a bank, and the bank would issue a note that represented ownership of that gold. The bearer of the note could go get the gold whenever they wanted, but they could also circulate the bill as a medium of exchange. And that's the beginning of currency. I mean, currency derives its value from the money that backs it up. And in the same way that we printed paper, we could create a digital token that would represent ownership of gold. So if you want to bring gold into the digital economy, that's the way to do it. And people can transact in gold online faster and far less cost than they could with Bitcoin, assuming anybody tried to transact in Bitcoin, but very few people do because it's very expensive and very slow and it's very volatile. Whereas, gold, you can really price products. The volatility in gold on a daily basis is very low. And of course, for centuries, gold was used as money. Gold was the medium of exchange and the unit of account. Prices were denominated in gold. No prices are denominated in Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't a unit of account for anything. It's not used as a medium of exchange. It's used to speculate. People buy Bitcoin because they think the price is going to go up, and they sell it to other people who think the price is going to go up. But it's not used as money. It's used as a speculative trading token, a collectible item that people build Bitcoin collections. They think they're going to get rich, and then they sell to other collectors. But at the end of the day, I don't think Bitcoin is unique enough to really give it value. I mean, they claim that it's scarce and that there's 21 million Bitcoin. Well, so what? I mean, you can't do anything with a Bitcoin. So what difference does it make? There's 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. There's plenty of Satoshis to go around. And you can't do anything more with a Bitcoin than you can with a Satoshi because you can't do anything. All you can do is trade it. But there's an infinite supply of other digital tokens. Look at the Trump coin that just came out, or the Melania coin. They have a capped supply. There's a finite number of Trump coins out there. So what? Right? There's no limit to how many Bitcoin, copycats there can be. There's tens of thousands. I mean, they're creating, I think, 1 million meme coins a day or something like that. Now I read. I think Bitcoin is the same thing as a meme coin. What's the meme? The meme is that it's digital gold, but it's not digital gold any more than an image of a hamburger is digital food. Yes, I live in a digital economy, but I have to eat real food. If I had a diet of digital food, I'd starve to death. Gold is a real commodity. That's why it became money. Yes, it has great properties that make it better money than other commodities like cattle or salt or seashells or whatever else humans have used over the millennia as money. But what gives gold value is its metallic properties that make it so unique and so desirable and so useful. It is the most useful metal. It's not just a beautiful metal that we could, use in jewelry. I've got gold jewelry on. I mean, yeah, it makes great jewelry, but it's also the best conductor of electricity. I mean, gold is used in all sorts of industries: electronics, aerospace, medicine, dentistry. And the reason that gold is a store of value is because when I own gold today, in 1,000 years, if somebody wants to use that gold for any purpose, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more uses for gold that are discovered in the future than we know about today, but all those properties will be there in 1,000 years. Gold doesn't decay, it doesn't tarnish. As Frisbee's, Dominic said, it's been there since the Big Bang, so it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
If a ship sank in the Caribbean here 500 years ago, if you could find the wreckage, the only thing that's probably still there is the gold, and it will look exactly the way it looked the day it sank, and it will have all the properties, and it can be melted down and used for anything. So that the most important thing about money is that it have value as a commodity first. Money is the most marketable commodity, but Bitcoin isn't a commodity at all. Again, people buy it. People have made a lot of money who bought Bitcoin, but people are going to lose a lot of money who don't sell Bitcoin. It's a zero-sum game. Some people make money at the expense of others who lose it. But of course, there's a lot of money being wasted on the whole ecosystem, on the industry, a lot of capital that is being misdirected to crypto because it's a bubble is coming out of industries that we really need. Because, I mean, gold is the furthest thing from a bubble. I know I'm in the retail gold business, and demand has been very, very low for years. Historically, you've had net outflows from gold ETFs. The public is not buying any gold. The price of gold hasn't even kept pace with the cost of mining it. The cost of mining gold has gone up more than the price of gold because there's not a lot of people buying gold. So gold hasn't even really reflected the debasement of fiat currency. So I think gold is still underpriced, and it's pretty far from a bubble. But the reason that Bitcoin is at 100,000 is because you had a bunch of Wall Street companies launch these ETFs and bought a bunch of Bitcoin. So a lot of speculators who have brokerage accounts, hopped on the bandwagon because they wanted to make money. And then that ran out of steam. So a bunch of people in the crypto industry gave a lot of money to Donald Trump to help elect Donald Trump. He got a lot of votes by pandering to the Bitcoin crowd. And now everybody thinks the U.S. government is going to buy Bitcoin and burn them, basically. They have this bill before Congress for the U.S. government to buy 1 million Bitcoin and never sell them for 20 years. And so that is why the price is going up. It's massive speculation on buying. But all of this is a house of cards. It is all going to collapse eventually. The fact that it's gone up so much doesn't discredit anything that I've been saying about it. I've always acknowledged that the price could go up. Sure, if people are willing to buy it, the price is going to go up. The problem is when people stop buying it, the price is going to collapse. And, I've never heard more foolish things said by smarter people than Bitcoin. I mean, in my career, the things that I hear are complete nonsense. And it's very frustrating, and sometimes you can hear it in my voice, and it's really a shame that so much effort and is being wasted on this. And yes, it's going to eventually collapse, just like the tulip bubble crashed. And maybe you could say that there's some benefit to Holland in the flower industry because of that bubble. And maybe there's some future in blockchain. I don't know, but there's no future in Bitcoin. Of that I'm certain. I don't think it'll ever be anything at central banks. I mean, central banks are buying gold. They'll continue to buy gold. You had El Salvador buy Bitcoin. I don't think, despite all the money that was given to the Trump campaign, I don't think Donald Trump is going to try to buy Bitcoin on his own. I don't think there's a prayer that the Loomis bill is going to pass. It's got no support. It's got no co-sponsors. So I think it's all a bunch of hype to pump up the price of Bitcoin so the insiders can continue to sell, because that's what you need. Like any pyramid scheme, you need a constant flow of new buyers so that the old buyers can get out. I think it's extremely important. MicroStrategy, buying over $1 billion of Bitcoin a week, kind of like clockwork. Every Monday, Saylor posts how many Bitcoin they bought. You've got people front running Michael Saylor. I mean, if there's this huge buyer that's just going to keep on buying regardless of price. He doesn't wait for a pullback. He just buys.
Yeah.
So if you know that this big buyer is going to be there, well, you want to buy to get ahead of them. And so I think that he's encouraging other people to buy Bitcoin to try to ride that. But of course, this huge buying in and of itself is pushing up the price. Uh, and how is he funding the buying? It's with borrowed money. Either he issues stock in his company, which he doesn't have to borrow if he just sells stock into the market, because the stock trades at a premium. So for now, he could sell shares and then take the shares and buy Bitcoin. But he also borrows money in issuing convertible preferred stock. And now there's another common convertible, which is a form of debt, because the holders could actually ask for their money back if the price of the stock doesn't go up, which eventually they will. But for now, it's a self-perpetuating loop, where the higher the price of Bitcoin goes, the higher MicroStrategy, the more stock he can sell, the more Bitcoin he can buy, the more money he can borrow to buy more Bitcoin. And so it's all feeding on itself to push the price of Bitcoin up. But eventually, just like what happened with the ETF, or not the ETF, was a Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, at one point it traded at a big premium, and I always warned that eventually it would go to a discount. And in fact, that's exactly what it did. It went to a huge discount. It got bailed out of that discount when it became an ETF. But there was a dynamic in place that caused it to be at a premium, and then it reversed, and that resulted in a discount. Well, I think the same thing is going to happen with MicroStrategy. I think at some point the stock is going to trade at a discount to its Bitcoin, not a premium. He's not going to be able to issue any more stock. I think he's not going to be able to issue any more convertible preferreds, because the people who are buying that are going to start to be cognizant of the real risk that that MicroStrategy may in fact go bankrupt and won't be able to repay this, because all it has on its balance sheet is Bitcoin. And then when MicroStrategy has to sell Bitcoin to repay the debt, and well, the market is going to collapse. The bottom's going to drop out when the biggest buyer becomes the seller. I think the only thing that could bail him out right now is if the U.S. government buys Bitcoin, which I think is ironic, because Bitcoiners need a government bailout to stop the whole thing from imploding. We need to get the U.S. government to use the force of government. Like, I've never bought Bitcoin on my own, but the government might force me to do it in theory if they were to subtract. I have a reserve. But I think it's going to be a crash. And I think the ETFs are also going to contribute, because I think what's going to happen is when the people who own all these Bitcoin ETFs, and they have a bigger and bigger part of the float now, when the market starts to drop and a lot of these people have stop orders in, and they're not philosophically hodlers, they're just trading it like because it was going up. But when you see a lot of people try to get out of their ETFs because they just want to cut their losses or they want to lock in a profit, all those ETFs now have to take those Bitcoin that they own and go into the market that day and liquidate it at the market. I don't think there's going to be the liquidity there, and there could be a complete implosion. And what's happened in the past when there were big Bitcoin drops, all of a sudden there'd be a bunch of new tethers created to buy up those Bitcoin. But the problem is, when the ETFs sell, the buyers can't pay in tether. The buyers have to pay in actual dollars, because that's what the brokerage firms need to put in the accounts of their customers. They can't say, hey, we sold your shares of your ETF and we gave you tether, right? They got to get. So I just think that there's a complete collapse coming, both from MicroStrategy and the ETFs, when they all have to get out. Well, I think on the margin, I think that Bitcoin may have taken some demand away from gold, but I think it's more competing with other risk assets. I mean, you talked about the high correlation between Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. Bitcoin has, very little correlation with gold, which I think is interesting. If it's supposed to be digital gold, it should be somehow correlated with actual gold, but it's not. So I think that people who are gambling on Bitcoin, I think most of that money is coming from other speculative assets that they might have gambled on instead of Bitcoin. I think that there's been a bigger impact on the mining stocks and maybe even on silver, because silver is more of a retail. Gold, you've had a lot of central bank demand, and I think that's been unimpacted by Bitcoin. But I think where you might have seen it is in the silver market. Silver seems very cheap. Silver is called the poor man's gold. And so if some of the poor men have been buying lottery tickets on Bitcoin, And certainly when it comes to gold, I think that some of the money that went into Bitcoin ETFs came out of gold stocks. So I think that's one of the reasons that gold stocks have been weak since the introduction. Because since the Bitcoin ETFs have come out, you've seen a big rise in the price of gold, but the gold stocks have actually gone down. And so I think maybe
that's
people have
because
sold gold stocks to buy Bitcoin ETFs. So
I
there
think
may
that
be some more of an impact there.
Dominic?
But on the actual price of gold, I think it's marginal. They reinvented Bitcoin as digital gold because it didn't work as a as a payment system, as money. And so they rebranded it, but I don't think it's any more digital gold. Again, then I said an image of a hamburger is digital food. I think it's fool's gold. But yes, people have made a lot of money in Bitcoin if they bought it, and now the price is higher and they can sell it. But the people who are buying it now are hoping that there's a greater group of fools in the future that's going to return the favor and pay an even higher price. But this type of dynamic cannot go on forever. It won't go on forever. I think it's kind of on its last gasp if now they're trying to count on government buying to maintain the momentum, because I think they've run out of private buyers to buy with their own money, so they need governments to buy with taxpayer money. Look, Bitcoin, I don't know. It could be either way. It could be higher, it could be lower. I think gold will be higher. I mean, I think there's no question that we're going to keep debasing currencies, dollars, euros, pounds, yen. I mean, the money supplies are going to keep growing. And so you're going to need more fiat currency to buy an ounce of gold. I mean, that's been continuing. I mean, for the past 25 years, the price of gold has risen more than the S&P 500, which means the real value of the S&P has actually gone down if you price it in real money. But Bitcoin could do anything. I mean, it could go up or it could come crashing down. I don't own it, and I think there's better bets. I think there's more upside potential in other assets and less downside risk. So I don't feel like speculating in Bitcoin, but I certainly wouldn't classify it as a store of value or a safe haven. It has nothing in common with those types of assets. It's a highly speculative, probably the most speculative asset, because it's all sizzle and no steak. I mean, it's pure meme, and you buy it simply because you think other people will, and people try to say that you buy it now, you're early. That's one thing I'm sure of. You're not early buying Bitcoin now. When all the cab drivers are talking about Bitcoin, and the cashiers, everybody knows about Bitcoin, everybody talks about Bitcoin, there's no way you're early if you're buying it now.